What is up, baseball fans? Welcome to episode 8, not episode 7. Messed up that in the tweet, but welcome to it. We actually have quite a bit to talk about. It will be a shorter podcast, but as usual, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Noah and I will be giving you a baseball podcast where we talk about high school stories, my personal college stories, stories across Major League Baseball, and maybe some of our favorite players, maybe some candidates for Cy Young and MVP. And as you know, if you look at other episodes, we also have our projected standings and our playoff projections where we both had a certain team winning. We're not going to tell you that. You'll have to look back at that video to find out. But first and foremost, Noah, once again, it's about time. Rob Manfred finally said, and for sure this time, that Major League Baseball has a punishment set in stone, possibly for the Red Sox. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, it's worth noting that this is something that's been going on for like a month now, where they said that the investigation was coming to an end. And then, and we talked about it. If you watched either of some of the more recent podcasts, we were like, oh, hey, so they've said that this is going to come out soon. And it still hasn't come out.
It was like a month
ago. Right. So basically what Manfred has said is that the investigation itself is done and that, the punishment should be announced sometime rather soon. Given everything else that's kind of going on right now in the world, I don't know if maybe it's going to be a little while longer. Like we're going to talk about today, and we'll get into it in a bit about the new deal between the MLB and the MLB Players Association. So I would imagine that kind of stuff's kind of taking precedent over the Red Sox scandal.
Yeah, we can't just overlook Boston either, because Alex Cora was part of the 2017 Houston Astros, and he led the 2018 Boston Red Sox with the best record all across Major League Baseball and won a World Series. So in 2017 and 2018, Alex Cora was involved. We don't know exactly the extent of how the Red Sox were involved, but it's funny right now because everyone's kind of sitting back like there's no way the Red Sox could have done anything, but we don't know, right? We don't know. Maybe they use buzzers, right? We just don't know. I'm really looking forward to seeing the commissioner's report. I do think it's kind of funny, though, how the coronavirus has actually kind of helped the Astros in a way. I feel like it's dumb to say, but like everyone's kind of forgotten about the Astros, it seems like, and what they did. And it's going to kind of come back, I think, once they say something about Boston, because it's going to bring back, take it with a grain of salt, right? But I don't know, man. I mean, I don't think it's going to be as bad as the Astros, but I definitely think it's got to be suspended or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, so my understanding from back when all this stuff really kind of first came out and we were hearing about it all for the first time was that the Red Sox like weren't using like on the field things. So like with the Astros, they were doing it in real time.
In real time, yeah.
Where they were banging on a trash can that they were getting from a camera feed, like the signs, or there's accusations about the buzzers, which no one's denied yet either. But for the Red Sox, what it seemed like the deal is that they were going back into like the film room in the clubhouse, looking at what the signs were from either that inning or the inning before, and then kind of using that information when they went up to bat in case someone got on second base. So I don't think that the punishment's going to be nearly as severe for the Red Sox as a whole. I would say Alex Cora is probably, it's going to be big time for him because, like you mentioned, he was involved in both the Astros and the Red Sox scandal. It wouldn't surprise me if he got like a pretty hefty ban from baseball. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be lifetime, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was like a multiple year suspension. Which at that point it might as well just be lifetime, because I don't think anyone's going to hire Alex Cora to be a manager and have to wait 2 years for him to even be able to manage.
Well, that too, and you can say the same about AJ Hinch, right? I mean, he got a year, which is kind of surprising, but that's still going to hurt his career. Who's going to want to hire him? Even if they do, the respect for the players under him, are they really going to listen to him? And same with Cora, right? Because Cora really seemed like a player manager, so that was kind of a big issue now is, okay, if this does happen, what happens to the Red Sox? What happens? Because we know Ron Renicky is, or is it Rob or Ron? It's Ron, isn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Ron Renicky. I mean, he's going to fill in nicely for the Red Sox, but I don't know, because it could kind of fall back on Renicky a little bit too, and he had nothing to do with it. So I don't know, man. I mean, what else do you think Manfred could possibly do? other than
I
just a
don't.
ban? Is there anything else you think?
Not really. I mean, I think it would have to be something similar to what we saw with the Astros, where it's going to come down on the front office. But I also like with this not being nearly as severe, at least what we know publicly, this isn't nearly as severe as what the Astros were doing.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to know because it's not one of those things where like it's come out publicly that the owner for the Astros and like the GM and president of baseball ops, they all knew that this stuff was going on. And like that was documented and became public through some leaks. But none of that's come out yet with the Red Sox. It's been a bit more quiet of like an investigation. So it's not really there's a lot more speculation with this as to what could even possibly happen or how serious it is.
And see, that's what is so worrisome for me is the fact that I don't know the severity of the punishment, because we were supposed to get an announcement over a month ago, remember? And
yeah,
we just haven't yet. So it's either going to be not so bad or it's going to be a lot more than we thought. I don't think there's going to be in the middle type balance right there. So I don't know, man. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. But, it's funny that we talk about the Red Sox because something happened to Chris Sale just this past week, and along with Noah Syndergaard, but we'll keep it with Chris Sale. It was mentioned before spring training started that he had some arm issues, didn't know if he'd be ready for opening day, but then that was really just because he was sick. Now I'm starting to think, was he really sick or was he just trying to like cover up his arm injury and whatnot?
Mm-hmm.
But now, it was announced that he had Tommy John surgery along with Noah Syndergaard. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of something with Chris Sale that this started at the end of last season in like September where he was having arm problems. And, maybe it didn't get as much publicity maybe as it otherwise would because the Red Sox missed the playoffs. But, this is something that the Red Sox organization knew about. And so they went about it as just, well, take the off season, give it some rest, and then come back for spring training. Hopefully it'll be healthy.
Yeah.
And so that's what they did. And obviously, it didn't fix itself. And so now he's gotten Tommy John surgery. You almost wonder if they would have been better off, having him get Tommy John surgery in October last year, because they would be, like 7 months into the process now for recovering from Tommy John versus starting now where he probably won't even be ready for the very beginning of the 2021 season. So,
and that doesn't change anything either. If the coronavirus hadn't hit or anything, like it would be smart to do that, especially when you're paying him so much money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, hindsight's 2020, and that's kind of part of it. Because I mean, obviously, if you can avoid surgery, you want to avoid surgery if it's going to heal on its own.
Yeah.
But that just doesn't always work out. Like I can point to, like for example, Michael Lorenzen. Obviously one of my favorite players, talking about him all the time, but he's a guy that had arm problems and they just rested and he did rehab stuff and he never got the surgery for Tommy John. He's been fine. But then you look at guys like Chris Sale or even another Reds prospect, Hunter Green, was a guy who tried that route and it didn't. And then he re-injured his arm and ended up having to get the Tommy John surgery. So it's kind of one of those things where you never really know what's going to happen. And so, I mean, I get why you play it safe and you go, let's try to avoid surgery if we can, because there's no reason to go under the knife if you don't have to.
Yeah, and it's crazy you say that because, I kind of had the Red Sox not having a great season, but not having a bad season. And now when baseball does come back, now maybe the Blue Jays have a chance of almost jumping the Red Sox in a way, because you got to think of all those starts Sale would have had. Perhaps, the Blue Jays could be sneaky too. Not a playoff team, but they could still be somewhat sneaky. Maybe jump the Red Sox now for third place in the AL East. So that's kind of unique. And then you look back now for Noah Syndergaard with the Mets. He just got Tommy John surgery, came out of nowhere, just had to get Tommy John. And now it's like the Mets could have been a playoff team, with their pitching rotation. There's 4 teams there that could legit win the division or make a wild card. And now you can almost count the Mets out a little bit because those other 3 teams still have, their studs that have a fighting chance. And missing out on Syndergaard with his starts, it's going to hurt a lot. For sure. It's going to hurt a lot.
Oh, yeah. I think you're definitely right. At least if we were redoing the projections, I definitely would have moved the Blue Jays above the Red Sox, just because there's not really much else there with the Red Sox pitching staff.
Yeah.
And obviously we went into it a lot when we did the AL East breakdown. But, once you get past Chris Sale in that rotation, it's like Eduardo Rodriguez and Nathan Eovaldi, and who knows what Nathan Eovaldi you're going to get. Are you going to get the one from the postseason that got him the big extension, or are you going to get the Nathan Eovaldi from pretty much the rest of his career, where he's okay, but not worth the close to $20 million a year that they're paying him. So, and then once you get past that, there's just not really much there at all. So I definitely think that this is going to be more of an impact for the Red Sox than it will be for the Mets. Because I mean, the Mets still have DeGrom, they've got Steven Matz, they've got guys that
I mean, yeah,
are okay, but you might be able to get something out of them. Like I'm sure one of Rick Porcello or Michael Wacha can probably give you like a 4.5 ERA for 100 whatever.
They still got Stroman too.
Right, and then they also have Marcus Stroman, who they picked up last year. So their rotation is in a better place to handle this kind of thing than what the Red Sox are.
That's a good point. I still think it's going to hurt. I personally still think it's going to hurt the Mets. I mean, because Syndergaard, these past couple of years, Syndergaard's kind of been either abysmal or he's just absolutely shoved. There hasn't really been in between kind of performance from him. But so that's a veteran guy, who's been in the organization and stuff like that. You have new guys coming in. I mean, Stroman, he still hasn't technically had a full year with the Mets. He got traded in the middle of the season last year from the Blue Jays. And then now you have Michael Wacha coming in. And who knows what kind of Michael Wacha you're going to get either. You know what I mean? If it's going to be early 2010s Michael Wacha who shoved or, the Michael Wacha right now. So, I don't know. I think it'll be interesting. I still don't think the Mets will make the playoffs. I know that we both agree on that. But I don't know. We'll see. But speaking of the playoffs and everything like that, and talking about the divisions, MLB projections, and everything like that, we need to talk about what MLB just announced yesterday. So do you want to go ahead and kind of break that down a little bit, and we can kind of go from there?
Yeah, so I do want to apologize at the very beginning of this because there is a lot of information that came out of this deal, and so you're probably going to hear a lot of me talking, so I apologize for that to everyone tuning in. But basically, the MLB and the MLB Players Association came to a deal on Friday. If you want a more full breakdown of this, if you want to read the article for yourself, it's on ESPN. Jeff Passan and Kylie McDaniel are the ones who wrote it. But basically what I've done is I pulled out a whole lot of the information from there to kind of give it to you guys where we can kind of talk about it and discuss it a little bit more in depth. So basically what the deal itself covered was, play, how they're going to schedule the season, stuff like service time and pair play, as well as the draft and arbitration, and then some other minor stuff as well that had to deal with like luxury tax. So the reason that this was such a big deal to get done by when it did, so it got agreed technically on Thursday and then the owners approved it on Friday. But basically there's a clause in the uniform player contract, and it's in paragraph 11 is what I think it is. And basically what it does is it allows the commissioner to suspend like everything in a national emergency. And
wow.
Right. And so basically what it came down to was that Manfred didn't want to do that because they didn't want to induce any sort of public panic that would come with deeming this a national emergency and suspending everything with a league because of that. And so that's kind of why they kind of rushed into this deal a little bit, or why it was so key that they get it done. So we can kind of get into some of the different things that were in here. So starting with when is baseball coming back? At this point, it's still unclear. It did say in the deal, both parties are going to work in good faith to complete as much of the season as they possibly can with the postseason as well. There were 3 big caveats to that, which I think are going to be the big snags as far as this plan goes. So there can't be any government bans on mass gatherings that would prevent teams from playing at their stadiums. You can't have any travel restrictions in the U.S. and Canada. And then there also has to be the determination from health professionals that playing doesn't pose any health risks. And then the one thing that they kind of did mention, and I know that the players are for this, and I'm not exactly sure where the ownership stands because obviously the money would come out of ownership pockets, but they considered playing like neutral sites and just playing without fans.
And that's what we but we talked about that. Like a lot that was mentioned in this article, Noah and I already talked about. So, and it goes back with a lot of things in our podcast, and I think it's really smart. I think neutral site is what you have to do, especially if you want to extend the season into October, November. You can't have the White Sox playing at their stadium it's going to be cold, and it could snow in November, or even if they
Hmm.
decide to go to December, which I highly doubt, but still, you never know. The New York Yankees, they can't do that. But there are tons of stadiums that are in a warmer climate. San Diego, Los Angeles, Tampa Bay, Miami, Atlanta, like Texas, Houston. There's so many stadiums, and then you look north, you have the Mariners, who have a dome that can close up. You have the Brewers, their stadium can close up, and you have the Blue Jays, their stadium can close up. I mean, there's so many possibilities. It really only hurts just a handful of teams, basically the East
Hmm.
Coast teams. The Orioles, the Red Sox, the Yankees, the White Sox, and the Reds. And you don't have to worry about the Tigers, because they're not going to make the playoffs. So their season will probably end no matter what, whenever it's October. So that's fine.
Yeah.
But I think it's smart. It doesn't give anyone a direct advantage or a disadvantage if both teams have to play at a neutral site. I think it's fair. And you look at the NFL, Super Bowl, they play at a neutral site stadium every year in a warmer climate, except for 1 year recently where they played in New York. So I don't know. I think you have to kind of embrace it just for 1 year. 1 year is not going to kill everybody, and it could offer some excitement, to say the least, because now you have half a stadium for one side, half a stadium for another. I kind of like it in a way. I think it offers a unique perspective, not only from my point of view, but across all Major League Baseball fans. What about you?
Yeah, definitely. I think that that's kind of the theme that as we continue to go through this, we're going to see is that basically what it comes down to is the players want to play. And so that's kind of how this deal got done is obviously they're welcome. Obviously, if you have the opportunity to play in front of your home fans in your team's city, then obviously you want to do that. But, some of the sacrifices that we'll see that they're making are, they just want to get out on the field and play. And I applaud them for that, to want to get out and do that. And obviously that bodes well for us as fans, because that probably means that would be sooner that we get out there. But kind of moving ahead as far as the planned stuff worked out. So as far as first steps, once we get to a point where the curve on the coronavirus stuff kind of flattens and we start getting to the point where recovery is like an option, they'll have to put together some sort of schedule, which I think is going to be another snag because who knows how long that's going to take. I don't know a whole lot about the scheduling process and how it works as a whole, but
Because you got to think of logistics and everything too,
right,
going from
because
city to city.
logistically going city to city,
Mhm.
as well as booking hotels and flights and all that, as that kind of stuff like reopens itself up. And then another thing that I think a lot of people are forgetting about as far as when the season's going to start is that these players are going to have to go back to some sort of training camp or spring training 2.0, because at some point, they're all the pitchers that have built up to, like, at this point we stopped pretty early in spring training, so maybe there were only 2 or 3 innings a start, but even still,
Yeah.
you're going to have to build your arm up to be able to go 6-7 innings in a game. And so one of the things that was proposed was possibly like a 2-week spring training. That way the players get enough time to try and get somewhat back into some sort of rhythm and routine. But one of the other things, which is another thing that we mentioned about, is that the players are willing to schedule more doubleheaders. Obviously, that would come with the caveat of expanded rosters. How do you feel about doing doubleheaders, pretty consistently?
So I read an article in The Guardian that proposed 7-inning doubleheaders. It's something you see in college and high school ball, and that changes the whole complexion of everything, right? Because we're so used to 9-inning games. Now all you need is a starter to go 7, and that now you save your bullpen, and you could almost start a reliever. It's going to add a lot of chaos. Personally, I would say no 7-inning doubleheaders, just because managers aren't used to that. Like, it's going to change, flip the script completely. But I understand logistically how, okay, well, you can squeeze up 14 innings in one day. That's only a game and like a half, technically, if you think about it. And then, because they're trying to play as many games as possible. I see where they're coming from, where they want to play as many games as possible by possibly doing 2 7-inning games. But I'd say maybe 2 9-inning doubleheaders a week. And the days you do that are on the weekends. So, like, maybe Friday, then one Sunday, just because it's a weekend and everything like that. and more fans can come out anyway.
Mhm.
If they still allow fans, I know we kind of touched base on that a little bit, but that's where I stand. I think maybe just 2 doubleheaders a week, but you can't do 7 innings. You can't. That just changes the whole strategy part of the game, and that's gonna take people out of the rhythm. What about you?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I don't like the idea of moving to 7 inning games at all, especially because, like in the past, like teams used to play double headers like pretty consistently. Now, obviously
Hmm.
that's, 40, 50 years ago, but like it's a thing that was done and they didn't have to change it to 7 innings to get those games in. So I don't see why we have to do that now.
Definitely expanded
Obviously,
rosters though. Definitely for
yeah,
pitching.
and so the proposed thing, I believe right now the number that's floating out is the 29 instead of what the 26 is now currently, and that
And
would
we
allow
said
you to.
30, right? That's
Yeah,
kind
I
of what
think
we
we
said.
we were somewhere
Yeah.
around 30 as well, and so obviously that gives you a few extra roster spots for pitchers. I think what would maybe make the most sense. I don't know if I would do both the double headers during the weekend. I would maybe do one weekend and maybe one on like a Wednesday. I know that the
Split it
Reds do
up. That's a good
this. I
idea.
obviously can't speak for the other one for the other teams, but the Reds pretty often do like a Wednesday like 12:35 start time game, and then they run some sort of business deal type of thing with that. And so I would assume that if you're already doing that anyways, then you could just do a 12:35 start and then like a 6:40 start and just play those 2 games back to back. And I think that that would work out perfectly fine.
I think what would be smart though is there's hardly going to be any off days. So if you do a double header, it has to be a day. Um, let's say you're the Cincinnati Reds and you're playing the St. Louis Cardinals in St. Louis. You don't want your last game of your homestand, just a 9 inning game, and then the next day, your first game on the road to be a doubleheader. If you're gonna have a doubleheader, it needs to be the middle game of a series. I think that's smart.
Yeah.
It has to be like the middle day of that 3 day series. So it could be a Wednesday, but some days maybe it could be like some weeks it could be a Tuesday or Thursday.
Right. Yeah.
But no matter what, you're always gonna have the start of a weekend series. So I completely agree with you on that. Just kind of letting everybody at home kind of understand where we're coming from on that, because you can't. They did that in the Frontier League, day game doubleheaders after a long bus trip, and
Mhm.
it's stupid. It's dumb
Yeah.
because nobody can recover, nobody can recuperate, and the energy is gone. So yeah, but I agree with you though for sure.
Yeah, and I'll briefly say, and then we'll kind of keep chugging through this breakdown. But I think that that's kind of something that, like we talked about earlier with the scheduling. Once we get to a point where we know where the season's going to be, obviously that kind of stuff will be built in. But just as long as it's not like within 2 or 3 days of each other, or like within 2 days of each other when they do the double headers, because I think that's when you run into roster issues as far as pitching goes,
That's true.
especially if one of those extra inning games or like one of the doubleheader games goes into extra innings, and then you're really burning through pitching, and then you got to go turn around a day later and do that again. But yeah, I think that that's kind of one of those things that they would get ironed out as far as once they get to the point where they can actually start building a schedule and working travel plans out.
Let's think about this for a second. So let's say the season starts July 1st. Let's just say July 1st is the start date. I'm trying to think logistically how many extra games if they do 2 doubleheaders or 2 doubleheaders a week. So that's 2 extra games. 1 month that's already 8, 10 extra games, and then you do
Mhm.
that for 3 or 4 months. That's your 30-40 game mark. That's very doable. So if you start out like you only have technically 100 games left, you can get to 140 by doing the
Yeah,
double
so
headers.
so they did mention it. Jeff Passan and Kyler McDaniel did in here that what they thought the best case scenario at this point would be is that by mid-May they can start getting players to return to some form of like a spring training 2.0,
Yeah.
and then at that point then start the season towards the beginning of June. And the number that they threw out would be a 130 game schedule as a possibility. Now they said that that's kind of a stretch, being with when the season would start. And what they threw out, what they had gathered from people, is that it was more likely going to be somewhere in the realm of 80 to 100 games for the season.
Jeez. I mean, that's not bad though at all.
Right.
That's not bad.
Now, another thing that the players had kind of agreed on with them that they'd be willing to do would be to stretch the regular season into October and the postseason into November, which is something that we kind of mentioned.
That sounds like music to my ears.
Right. Along with that, they said that they would be fine with the neutral site World Series, which I think that we've covered as well. But one of the other things that I thought was interesting that had been proposed was possibly expanding the playoffs. And I wanted to know how you felt about possibly doing that this year.
I think it would be chaotic, personally. I just think that they already had something set in stone for 2023, I believe, to start, or was it 2022?
Well, even that plan was just proposed.
Right,
That's
but I'm
not
just
even
saying,
official.
but we don't even have an official thing yet for 2 years or 3 years down the road. If we try to change that now, that's going to change everything. I could see why they want to do it. More excitement, I guess, and more teams have a chance because there are limited games. But honestly, you kind of have an idea for where teams are going to be at by half a season anyway. So, unless you're the A's who, flip a script, because they always start about 49 and 46, and then they just go off. So, it's going to be crunch time because now second half teams of a season, they're going to have to be first half type teams. They're going to have to come out and shove. And the A's are good, by the way. So, I don't know. I like it personally, but if they did want to expand, I think it would just have to be two more wild card spots.
Yeah.
You can't offer a 3-game series. It just has to be 2 one and done games per division, and then they get to play. I don't know. It's a mess.
I don't know. I like the idea of an expanded playoff in this season. I'm not necessarily a fan of it, like we had talked about before a few episodes ago, as far as like the 2023 proposed plan. I'm not necessarily a fan of that in that form. But for this season, where we're only going to get 80 to 100 games, and they've already kind of made the decision that the postseason is going to be in neutral sites anyways, and they're obviously going to be in places where the weather's going to be fine. I kind of like the idea of maybe let's expand the wild card games out from a 1-game series. Let them play 3 games and let 2 more wild card teams in. And then I just think that when you look at the MLB, you play 162 games in a regular season. And then you go to the playoffs, and more often than not, it's still not entirely clear who's going to be the best team and who's going to win. Obviously, it's a little different, here in the past year or two, because the Astros had built themselves quite a juggernaut of a team. We look at what the Dodgers did this offseason and the Yankees. But generally speaking, it's not super clear. But then when you look at the NBA or the NFL, for 20 years now, it's been, okay, well, we know the Patriots are going to go at worst 14-2, and they're going to be the favorites to win. Or the NBA, by the time you play 82 games, you pretty much know, the past 4 or 5 years, it was pretty obvious that it was going to be the Cavs and the Warriors, when the Cavs still had LeBron, and it was. But with the MLB, you don't have that. There's still
anything can happen. You look at the Nationals.
Can happen.
Yeah.
And so I think that because you're cutting the games, you don't necessarily know who's going to be winning the divisions, or who's going to be the at the top of the division at the end of the season.
Yeah.
And so I think you let more teams in to compensate for the fact that there's not that many games to create that sort of separation.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that. It could be something different though, where you do have 8 teams now for each division. Just think about it like that. And you could do a 1-8 seed type thing against or whatever, and just kind of branch your way into the World Series. I mean, it's possible. You never know. But, I mean, we'll find out, I guess, because they're going to say something. They got plenty of time still to come up with something. But it just sucks that, we don't have baseball right now in our lives. It does, for real. So, I don't know, man.
So that covers everything as far as scheduling goes for what came out of this deal. So now we're going to kind of move into the other things that came out of this. So one of the big question marks this year has been service time, because obviously, players that are pending free agents after this year are guys that are going to be moving into arbitration after this year. That kind of stuff matters to them because it's going to determine what they're getting paid. So Basically, what they've decided is that players who logged in like a full service time year last year, if no seasons played, will get another full year of service time. So what that means is guys like Mookie Betts, who the Dodgers went out and acquired this year, or JT Realmuto, who's on the last year of his deal, or Trevor Bauer for the Reds, who's on the last year of his deal, would just become free agents without ever having to play, this season out. And so, man, that sucks if you're the Dodgers. And we'll get to more reasons why this deal really sucks for the Dodgers.
But that could change everything. Yeah, for real.
Yeah, but it would be a pretty huge deal. So then, if the season is played, they're going to shorten the requirements. I believe right now it's somewhere. Let me think of it. It's somewhere in the like 150s or something like that for how many games you have to play to get full service for a season. They're going to cut that down to allow players to reach a full. Obviously, if you play 80 games, then you're not going to reach the whatever benchmark of games it is. So they're going to cut that down proportionally for what you need for a full service time season. And then with that, they decided that salaries are also going to be proportional to how much of the season is played. So theoretically, let's say 81 games is how many games they're going to play, and a player is on contract right now to make $10 million for the season. Mm-hmm. So you play 50% of the season, so they would get $5 million. They also decided that performance clauses are going to work the same way. So let's say a guy gets $1 million bonus if he hits 40 home runs this season. Now, if they play 81 games, he'll hit 20 home runs to get that same performance bonus.
Right. That makes sense. You just kind of have to synthesize it a little bit and figure out how you can still get those same measurements of how to get paid for those bonuses. Makes sense.
Yeah. So
I want to chime in real quick.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Yeah. For sure.
I do think it's interesting though for the fact that Trevor Bauer, because Trevor Bauer is a guy who loves 1-year deals.
Mm-hmm.
And, he did say like he likes Cincinnati and everything like that, but I think the Reds are paying him $18 million this year.
Yep.
$18 million. That's a lot of money. Like that's why these deals are so important for Major League Baseball to figure out. The Reds don't want to have to pay him $18 million if he's never going to touch the field. Like it sucks. It does. That kind of hurts the Reds moving forward too. And you have to think about other teams as well. I mean, imagine being the Twins. You just signed Josh Donaldson to a pretty big 4-year deal, and now there's 1 year, and he gets paid, and he didn't even help you on the field. Like it sucks.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely there's no win-win outcome, when it comes down to where we are right now. Like obviously, someone's going to have to lose something, and with that kind of stuff, obviously, it's probably going to end up being franchises for some amount of money if the season ends up not happening at all, which I think that we'll probably get to a place at some point where we'll play this season, but obviously you never know. Like we could see some sort of huge second spike or something like that, or maybe we finally get to a point where players come back, and then in like July, someone for pick any team comes down with it again, and then suddenly, well, that team's played this team in the last week, and then that team's played these 2 other teams, and then suddenly everyone's been exposed to it again. You kind of have to go through the same process. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it all works out for sure.
Yeah.
So one of the things that did come out is that the MLB gave advances to players. So they advanced $170 million, and that's to be distributed through April and May. And so basically the way it works is it's going to get divided up in terms of like tiers amongst players. And so if there's no season, then the players just get to keep whatever money they got out of that $170 million. If the games are played, then that money gets factored into that contract salary that I talked about before. So the theoretical player that would make $5 million this year in an 81 game season, let's say they got $2 million out of this $170 million, then they would only get $3 million paid to them throughout the course of the rest of the season because they got the $2 million advanced to them technically.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So with that, one other thing to mention, arbitration is not going to put as much emphasis on counting stats Obviously with a shorter season, you can't really hold that against players.
Oh, Aristides Aquino, you only hit 10 home runs, and we've only played a month and a half of baseball. No, sorry, didn't meet
Right.
your bonus. Sorry, you're not a good player. You only hit 10 bombs. No, I completely
Yep.
understand.
So now we're going to move on to basically the getting screwed over portion of what this deal has in store. So non-roster invites to spring training who were on minor league deals that were looking to basically basically the guys that come into spring training with a basically is like a tryout and they're trying to make the 40-man roster and make the team. Those guys aren't going to get any of the money from the 170 million, so they're not going to get paid for this time off. Uh, any current free agents, so guys like Yasiel Puig who haven't signed yet, they've frozen the rosters, so those guys can't sign and get paid either. So they're just kind of out of luck. Um, the minor leagues don't have their own union, which frankly they should because they get screwed over in pretty much every one of these deals.
Yeah.
But until they get a players association, there's nothing you can really do about it. They're not really going to get anything out of this either, unless they're a guy that's on like the 40-man, which is less than like 10% of all minor leaguers. So pretty much 90% of the minor leagues aren't really going to get paid for this deal either. Um, so I mentioned the Dodgers getting screwed over earlier. This is another place where this might happen, and that's that if the All-Star game gets eliminated, which it might depending on when the season starts. They didn't explicitly say this in the article, but it was pretty well implied that the Dodgers are just going to lose their All-Star game bid for this year, and so then they have a chance to lose the All-Star game and all the income from that and Mookie Betts all the season with absolutely
Dude,
nothing.
nothing can ever go right for the Dodgers. It seems like they have everything set in stone. This is like their year, and it's all going to crap right now just because of COVID-19. It's crazy. It's crazy.
One thing though that Jeff Passan and that they proposed was that since they're going to have to be a neutral site World Series, that if the All-Star game gets eliminated, then they could move, like they could just deem LA to be the spot for the neutral site World Series to try and make up for the fact.
That'd be fair.
Because I mean LA has good weather, so obviously that's not going to be like an issue, and so that would be a way for them to kind of, I guess, maybe recoup those costs or whatever you want to call it for the fact that they would miss out on an All-Star game.
Yeah. That's potentially 7 games too, which is more than a celebrity softball game. So that's one day, and then the home run derby the next day, and so that's better than 3 days. You're getting almost. They're gonna make the money back easily. Then that's a good point.
For sure.
Although it sucked though if they make the World Series, because then it's like, oh,
right,
now
then
the Dodgers have home field advantage. That'd be bad.
Right, and so if they made the World Series, then I don't know what you do at that point. Maybe you don't have the World Series in LA because it would be hard to, say it's a neutral site game and then play it in LA as the LA Dodgers. That wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense. So we'll get into this last portion here, and this is the part that's been.
I'm sorry, Brady said, "Put the World Series in LA, and you're getting an earthquake."
But you know what? It wouldn't be the first time that happened in the World Series. So
A's and Giants, baby.
Yep. So it's possible.
It is possible.
So the last portion of this that was kind of the most controversial of all of this was pertaining to the MLB draft. Basically, for this year's draft, so they're going to move back the draft dates for this year and next year. I think that the draft currently is like the beginning of June. I believe they're moving it back to like mid-July.
Might as well do it at their office too, not go to Omaha.
And so what they're doing is they're reducing the number of rounds. So the typical MLB draft has 40 rounds. They're reducing it for the 2020 draft from 40 to 5. And so Manfred has the option in the deal that if he wants to increase it, he can. I don't know if they're actually going to, but that's a lot of players that are suddenly not getting drafted. Dude. And so you're going to have either those players are going to return to college, or you're going to have stud high school prep type players that normally would be going straight to a major league team or to like their minor league affiliates, and now they're going to be going to college. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that plays out, because I would imagine that's going to cost some. I mean, obviously kids across the country, if they're more talented players going to college, and those are going to be scholarships and stuff that are going to get taken away from other people.
Well, yeah, it sucks because listen, it's completely dumb that they bring it down to 5 rounds. I mean, I understand you can't scout and everything, but you do have those high school kids stealing these high first round draft picks. You know, Bobby Witt Jr. last year drafted 3rd or 4th overall. They're stealing these high draft picks. Imagine being a college student and you've been grinding, like you worked your way up on the bench. Let's say you're playing at Stanford, right? You haven't been playing, and then okay, you hit 250 your sophomore year, and then your junior year, okay, you've eclipsed 320. Now it's like, okay, now serious talks about getting drafted, and then boom, you played a couple games this year, and then boom, you're done. You could go back for eligibility, or you could go into the draft. Most likely, you'd probably get drafted, you know, maybe in the late stages of whatever. But now you're taking away all of that from a college kid. High school kids can still go to college and play a season and then get drafted. But you're taking away the potential for, you know, sleepers in college, you know, even JUCOs. 5 rounds. Baseball is such a huge sport, and for people to come up through the farm systems, it logistically doesn't seem feasible at all. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. Either you don't do the draft at all, and because everybody's got their eligibility back for the spring sports, that was already mentioned, or you have to keep the 40 rounds. You have to. And then you just have to take a gamble. Maybe give them less money, and then if they decide they don't want to sign, that's okay. They can go back. But shorten it to 5 rounds, that's insane, because the NFL draft, for crying out loud, is 7.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and then in 2021, they're going to shorten the draft again, but that one's only going to be to 20 rounds instead of 5 like this year's.
See, that's fine though. 20 rounds is more. That's not.
Yeah, it's more feasible than 5.
Yeah.
Draft bonus payments are going to be delayed, so obviously when guys sign, they typically get some sort of signing bonus depending on where they get drafted. Obviously, first round guys, it's a lot higher than rounds after that, but those payments are going to get delayed. And then the other big thing is that undrafted players can't get more than 20,000. And so I think that this is a way for teams to kind of manipulate talented players to take less money. So if you look at, let's say you're a guy that's projected to go in like the 4th or 5th round. And so like in the 4th round, your draft slot is probably going to be worth around $500,000. So let's say Team X calls you up and goes, hey, we're thinking about taking you with our pick here. Would you be willing to sign for 200,000? Now, obviously you're thinking, well, I'm supposed to be getting 500,000 because that's what this draft slot bonus is supposed to be.
Yep.
And then you tell them that and they go, okay, well, best of luck to you. Hope you don't get undrafted, where the most you can get is 20,000, which is 10% of what we're offering you. Yeah. And so you're kind of forcing players into taking, you know, a pay cut just to avoid the risk of the fact that they can't get more than 20,000, which is like, I mean, that's less than 5% of what they could be getting, you know, in some cases. And so I don't know. I don't like that, because I think that's just a huge way for teams to just manipulate players and stuff like that, which organizations already do enough of with service time and stuff like that. So I'm just not a fan.
Yeah, I'm not a fan either. Not a fan at all. And I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. So that covers pretty much everything out of the deal. If you want to go, like I said before, it's on ESPN. It's written by Jeff Passan and Kylie McDaniel. There's some other stuff in there about luxury tax and debt and stuff like that for the teams. If you want to go read it in its entirety, once we get off of here, I'll be sure to tweet out the article on our Twitter page if you want to. That might be a little bit easier way for you to find it if you want to go look at it and read it in entirety. But I think that just about covers the breakdown.
Yeah, dude, that's. I'm glad you said that. Yeah, we'll definitely put that on our Twitter page after the podcast is over. But now it's transitioned to still a little bit about us and what we can do. We started streaming. We started streaming on Twitch, and we're doing MLB The Show. I'm playing in a custom league. It's called the YouTube League. It's called YouTube League Baseball. It probably should be called the Twitch League Baseball or Twitch Baseball League, because everyone plays on Twitch. But it's really cool. We got 20 teams in there. Noah's in there. He's actually undefeated. He's stupid good at the game. He might be handing me an L tonight. We'll see. But no, it's really cool. I want you guys, if you are tuning in, be sure to check us out at on Twitch at Chalk Talk Nation. Same thing as our Twitter at Chalk Talk Nation. And then you can find Noah's channel on there and all the other guys that are following me and that I'm following, and then you can hit them with the follow, and then we get notifications sent to Twitter every time we go live. Okay, so it'd be cool to interact with everyone and whatnot. I'm trying to see if I'm leaving anything out per se.
I do want to briefly mention while you're talking about it. Also, keep an eye on the MLB right now on their Twitter page. They recently hosted a tournament with 4 MLB players. I think this is something they'll probably continue to do. But they had it was Amir Garrett, Blake Snell, Trevor May, and Hunter Pence did like an MLB The Show tournament, and they streamed the whole thing over on their Twitch. And I know Amir Garrett came out on top in this one, but it's a cool way for the players to kind of get to interact with fans during a time like this where there's not really a whole lot else going on. So in addition to our Twitch league and stuff like that, also keep an eye on the MLB if you're just looking for more content in general.
No, absolutely. And also Road to the Show. I do Road to the Show, whether it's Vinny Perazzo or my personal one. My personal one, I'm already in the big leagues and I'm actually doing really well. I play on Legend difficulty. I play in the hardest, so you got to respect the drip. Noah is a big franchise guy. I stream franchise too, actually. I've been kind of doing that recently. But I'm going to be giving Noah the Chalk Talk Nation information on Twitch as well. So whenever we go live, it may be him, it may be me. But it'll be good. And now we have full minors rosters, and there's a lot to come. So there's a lot of content. What we'll do, actually, when Noah posts that article for the deal with MLB and MLB PA, I will actually link up or pin a tweet with our Twitch information, because Noah and I talked about this, the Twitch information, YouTube information, and etc. So any final remarks?
I think we've covered it all.
All right, well, be sure to tune in next Sunday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Pacific. We hope to see everyone there. And be on the lookout for our streams. We pretty much stream every day on Twitch. So hope to see everyone there. But until then, take care. Wash those hands.